In the small village on the edge of Kirkwood, a peaceful morning unfolded as soft sunlight filtered through the green foliage. Clara Mitchell was making tea when a strange scratching sound came from the door, carried through the morning mist. Curious, she stepped out onto the porch and froze in astonishment. A full-grown lioness stood before her. But the lioness did not growl or bare its claws. Instead, she gently placed a small, frail lion cub at Clara's doorstep before backing away. The cub looked weak, its front paw injured, its breath ragged, its body trembling from exhaustion. The mother lion sat a few meters away, never taking her watchful eyes off her cub. Clara called out to her husband, then immediately phoned the nearby Kibra Wildlife Rescue Center. While waiting for help, she slid a towel under the cub and gently fanned its fragile body to help it breathe. Strangely, the lioness remained calm, unthreatening, her gaze fixed on Clara, not hostile, but filled with quiet hope. At that moment, Clara knelt, locking eyes with the lioness for the first time without fear. The lioness tilted her head slightly, as though waiting for a miracle from human hands. Clara whispered softly, "I know who you are. You still remember me, don't you, Naira?" For a brief instant, the lioness lowered her head, an unspoken acknowledgement shining in her amber eyes. Clara took a clean cloth, soaked it in warm water, and tenderly wiped the mud from the cub's wounded leg. The cub whimpered softly but did not resist. Clara's heart tightened with pity. The wound was deep, likely from a sharp rock or a rusty trap, and blood still seeped despite her efforts to stop it. She used a piece of cloth as a temporary bandage, carefully placing a pillow beneath the cub's belly to ease pressure on the injured limb. The lioness rose, took a step closer, then sat again, close enough for Clara to hear the steady rhythm of her breathing. "Let me help your child. I promise I will do my best," Clara assured her, her eyes never leaving that patient, hopeful gaze. When the rescue team arrived, they swiftly administered first aid and carried the cub into their specialized vehicle. The lioness stood, approached the wooden fence, but stopped, unwilling or unable to cross into human territory. A rescuer murmured, "I've never seen a lion act like this. It's like she's begging us." Clara watched those familiar eyes and was transported back a decade to a memory she'd never forgotten. 10 years earlier, as a volunteer at Addo Elephant National Park, she had discovered an injured lion cub trapped near death. She had cared for that cub for 6 long months, tending its wounds, feeding it piece by piece until it regained its strength. She had named the cub Naira, Light of Resurrection, and when it was time to release her back into the wild, Clara had held her close, tears streaming down her face. She never imagined she would see Naira again, much less have Naira come back to find her. Later that day, the vet scanned the cub's collar and made a shocking discovery. The cub was Naira's own son, the child of the very lion Clara had once saved. Clara's tears flowed freely as the truth sank in, while the entire rescue team stood in silent awe at this extraordinary bond. For 3 days, the cub received intensive care, antibiotics, IV fluids, constant monitoring. And for those 3 days, Naira waited outside Clara's house, unmoving, enduring blazing sun and driving rain, refusing to leave. She didn't eat, only drank the water Clara left nearby, her vigilant eyes fixed on the window. At first, the villagers were uneasy, but soon their apprehension turned to compassion. They began bringing food and stood respectfully at a distance, honoring the lioness's quiet vigil. One night, Clara placed a chair beside Naira's resting spot and sat beneath the moonlight with her old friend. She whispered, "Do you still remember me, Naira? I've never forgotten the look in your eyes that year." Naira did not stir, but her ears twitched slightly, and her eyes half closed as if she understood every word. The next morning brought hopeful news. The cub was out of danger and ready to experience fresh air. Clara asked for permission to bring the cub onto the porch where Naira could see him. She gently laid the cub on the grass, then stepped back, letting nature take its course. The cub lifted his head, recognized his mother, and let out a faint cry before limping forward. Naira approached, lowered her head, and tenderly licked her cub's forehead before rubbing her head against his back, enveloping him in a mother's embrace. The entire village stood silent, some quietly wiping tears, witnessing a moment of profound beauty and love. Clara stood on the porch steps, arms pressed to her chest, her eyes glistening with emotion as she watched the two creatures she loved most reunite. Naira lifted her gaze to Clara one final time, not with sorrow, but with quiet gratitude. There was no roar, no dramatic farewell, only the profound meeting of human and wild spirit. Then Naira turned and, with her cub at her side, walked slowly toward the misty hills beyond the village. Clara remained standing long after they disappeared, gazing until all she could see was the gentle sway of grass in the morning breeze. News of the event spread swiftly from local newspapers to social media across South Africa. The scientific community was astounded. Researchers from the University of Cape Town launched a study declaring Naira the first documented case of emotional memory in a wild African lion. Clara was invited to share her story on Clara television, moving the studio audience to tears. A BBC Africa documentary crew came to record the remarkable journey of Naira and Clara. At Kirkwood Township School, a mural of Naira and her cub was painted, bearing the words "Remember and Trust." Children wrote heartfelt letters to Naira, though knowing she couldn't read, they simply wanted to send their love to her gentle heart. Clara planted a bush of wildflowers where Naira had once kept vigil, naming it the Waiting Corner, a living tribute. Every morning she sipped her tea, gazing toward the forest, her eyes quietly hopeful. Then one rainy morning, Clara noticed fresh, wet lion tracks near the fence, one large, one small, just like the prints she had seen the day they walked away. No one had seen Naira return, but Clara knew. Naira had come silently, leaving behind a voiceless greeting. From that day forward, once a month, the footprints appeared at dawn. Clara never told anyone. Instead, she marked each date in a private journal, a quiet record of a bond bridging two worlds. Every time she saw those prints, her heart felt tethered to the depths of the wild. Love, memory, and trust, no matter the species, always endure where the heart remains true. Clara eventually wrote her story and sent it to an old friend back in Addo with a simple message: it has returned. In a world increasingly distant from nature, a miracle had unfolded, not because of science, but because the kindness once sown had returned in full circle. And deep in the Addo forest, a lioness lived on, still remembering, still trusting, still believing in the goodness of humankind.